So I started art, like, I learned to paint with spray cans, ink markers, like on the street doing tags, walls, pieces. I used to paint at trackside a lot in Victoria. I learned, I mean, me and my best friend got caught doing tags back home. We did our community service hours. Like, that was my background, so that's always stayed really strong to me in my work, is that pure concept of like what art should be, who it's for, and like what you do with it should be quite free and for everybody. Like, I don't make my work aimed at like young people, old people, or I try to just keep it very raw, very like something that you could do if it was middle of the night and you're in a rush. You don't have time to think about it, like just what comes out of your mind when you have 5 seconds to spill something down on a wall. Like, that's totally what my work has always been about, is what spills out. So yeah, I learned to paint on the street a bit, and then I was in Victoria studying engineering. I hated engineers, so I wanted to be surrounded by artists, so I decided to apply to art school. A couple weeks before, I bought my first set of paints, learned how to paint, got in, went to ExhibitVic here, which was a great school, but it's a little theory-based. They don't really teach you much applied skills. But yeah, I loved the school there, but that was good. But yeah, now I've been trying to focus more of my work with more time in it. I couldn't do much work on the street because you're in such a rush. I like what comes out when you're in a rush, but I don't like the final product when you've only spent half an hour on a piece. Like, I like spending months and months on a piece with that same passion that comes out when you're a little out of it, a little painting fumes everywhere, and like your mind can just spell out a little bit more raw. But yeah, the past few years I've just been trying to pursue a bit more of a fine art painting background, canvas-based. Some installation shows around town I'd like to do a lot more of, where you incorporate the work with the space and have the work flow off the canvas, filling the walls, and lets your mind just flow with it a little bit more. My work tends to fit always in the gray space between abstract and figuration. It always starts with a raw idea, concept, emotion, something in the gut that doesn't really have a real figurative space, nor would it really come across strongly enough for me abstractly. The world is so real of textures and space and color. I try to pick up little bits of that, and almost like a fragmented dream, where like you wake up with like a feeling of your gut, where you know if it was a good dream, a happy dream, like you know the base emotion, but it was like it's all over the place, it's nonsensical, things are transforming, people's faces change, but you know who they are. Ideas like that I try to like keep pretty strong in my work, of what the subconscious mind does and the spaces that your mind makes on its own. I think content in work is extremely important. Like, there's some work for me where there's definitely a lot more content. There's an explicit message being expressed. Some of my other work is a bit more raw and abstract. It's more about an emotion or a gesture, almost, like just what your body would be expressing. But there's definitely some work that I have that it's about space, it's about security, it's about who's watching spaces, what you can do with public spaces. Definitely public spaces are my main interest. That's why I love to do mountains a little bit, landscapey, like those spaces we all recognize as open, free, public spaces that we all somehow have a right to. But you really don't. Like, the Crown owns most lands. You can't just walk into the woods and build something. Like, it's all really controlled. So I like to make work that tries to express this almost over-controlled nature we have over all public space. Even the views of public space is controlled in towns. You know, like you can't build above a certain width to height ratio in Victoria because everybody is protecting their views. You know, like it's natural, but it's all very controlled by the laws we're making. It's 2D. That's why I like in some of my work to work quite 2D, because I think the human brain naturally breaks things down to like on or offs. You know, that's how we build computers. Things like it's switches. Things either are or they aren't. We put them in boxes. Like that's part of the human brain, is to make things either one or the other. It's hard for your brain to really just fit in gray spaces. You want to see something. Like once you see a picture and you visualize what it is, like once you see the mountains, you always go to that picture because your mind is like, it wants something. It wants to decide on a space. So I'm always trying to destroy this idea of foreground, background. Where do you start? What's bringing you in? Where's the picture going? What is the space you're seeing? Like it's always shifting. It's always transforming over time. And yeah, time is a big part of my work. I like to represent time, show the fourth dimension through the work, representing space as it changes over time, pretty fluidly, organically. What spaces really look like as you see them over time. Color in my work totally comes from my background as a street artist. Like you're always trying to make work that'll stand out, that'll grab your attention, because it's a battle out there. There's so much art, there's so much everything, that to have someone stop for just a second to engage with your work is half the battle. So, I mean, I trained myself to make my work as vibrant, as bright as possible. It comes from signage, comic book art. Any of that work, that's the more bold it is, the more strong like it feels. I mean, that was a big too, was this masculine part of street art is always about like being very strong and bold, and you build up a picture of yourself that's bigger than who you are, that's representing yourself as like a logo, a company almost. And I try and keep that work, that feeling in my work of plastic. Like I love the way plastic looks and feels. I mean, it is what paint is. I try to represent what I'm painting with. It seems more honest. It's truthful. I'm not trying to disguise the canvas with a picture in it. I'm trying to cover the canvas with plastic and represent the plastic as an idea, a concept, an emotion. An event happening, something that occurred on the canvas, not something that you're representing and trying to draw them in and trick them into seeing something. Like I want you to see the plastic. I want you to see what I'm working with. Like I want it to be evident what it was created with, because that's what most things in the world are made out of, plastic, and signage everywhere. It's plastic, it's fake, but we don't even think about it anymore. You know, it's pretty hard for me to not paint with hot pink or baby blue or any of these vibrant shades, because they seem to me the most plastic, the most fake. You know, you find baby blue and hot pink out there, but their combination with like sherbet, seafoam green, these decorative shades that we've become so used to in industrial commercial practices, applied to mountains. Like it seems more truthful about the world out there. Like it's all covered in plastic, and that's like the truth behind the mountains is this like dripping hot pink commercial industrial waste everywhere. I've been trying to keep my new work a lot more simple, a lot more about one idea. My favorite prof in school was Robert Hughes, and he always told me that the best work out there had one idea, one thing was happening. There could be a lot of noise everywhere, but when you broke it down, there was one general idea. And I've been trying to get rid of the noise and just try to pare down the gesture to one giant drip, one giant movement, one transformation. a lot more simple. The work is a bit more, it has almost less spatial depth because it's more about the graphical texture, one motion that's happening. Like in this work here, this work is about the circle in the center where the least amount of things are happening. There's almost nothing happening in the center of the piece because it's about the motion of all the paint dripping around the piece, about that circle, that one idea, the very simple curves. But this work to me has had a lot less content. I haven't had the same social content in the work. It's not so much about public space. This to me is more about the gesture. It's simpler, which sometimes works for me, but I mean, I definitely will go back to making more political, social work with content. But it's been great for me to make work with, which is more about the technique, more about just the paint itself, paring it down almost out of the social context. Like, I'm not sure where this work even fits into context of the real world, because it's such this abstract, plastic movement of color. This type of work to me has a lot more content. It's saying something very specific, and a lot of people get offended just by the subject in the piece, and then they're not thinking about how the subject is saying something. Where to me, like, this work is about how people choose bondage in your life. You choose to have commitments, to have rent, to have your Visa card, so you have to go to your job, you have to do all these things, you're bound to your urban life. And you chose that. And I like to use this type of source material because I think most people know that, like, it's sourced from, like, pornography, where the girl would have been like, she chose to do this, like, she's being paid, this is her job, she's an erotic model of sorts, you know, like, it's not something being done against her will. Some people see these work and they think it's about things being done against your will, and it's totally not. It's totally about things you subject yourself to. Like, I don't think in her face she's fighting, she's not resisting being in this position, she's accepted it. Yet she's bound to it, and, like, you can be uncomfortable, you know, yet it can still be a beautiful experience. You can feel safer, you know. And then I think that's a very contemporary new thing that's been happening among, like, young people, you know, in their sex lives. They find out about these things, and I mean, it's all one life. I try not to separate what people might do behind the bedroom to, like, your car payments. You know, to me it's the same thing. You know, you're bound to it all. And you enjoy it. You know, you love your car, but you complain about going to work the next day, and it's like, well, get rid of your car and quit your job, but those are the things you chose, so you have to suffer through your bondage.